Jesus fucking Christ. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cameron Journal Newshour. Thank you so much for coming in this evening. Sorry that I'm a little bit late from my usual broadcast hour, promptly at 7. It's been a long and chaotic day. Mercury's in retrograde, and we can tell. My name is Cameron Cowan. Welcome to the Cameron Journal Newshour. Please feel free to find us online at Cameron on Twitter and LinkedIn. All links at CameronJournal.com. You'll also want to make sure to sign up for the Cameron Journal newsletter. I got to report the strikes in Iran and the death of the Ayatollah all at the same time. This week's newsletter was Iran attacked, Ayatollah dead. So if you want the best of the Cameron Journal delivered to your inbox every week, you are going to want to sign up at CameronJournal.substack.com or CameronJournal.com/newsletter. Signing up in either location will get you to where you need to be. And then also Cameron Journal Plus. Big shout out to my Cameron Journal Plus subscribers. If you want to support this show and my journalism, please go to CameronJournal.com/subscribe and you can sign up for Cameron Journal Plus. I am going to be starting here very soon my new salon series where we take the best guests of the Cameron Journal podcast and talk about them with Q&A and all this type of thing, and it will be free for Cameron Journal Plus subscribers, and everyone else will have to pay. So now's a great time to get involved because it's only $5 a month or $8 on Substack because they take a cut. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's dive right into the headlines. As you know, if you don't, you should. Overnight between Friday and Saturday, the United States and Israel, beginning first with Israel, and that's important to note, began military airstrikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. On Saturday afternoon, we found out that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who'd been in power since the revolution, had been killed in his private bunker outside of Tehran. And so it was a hard hit early on. However, as we have said for years and years, Iran is, unlike some other recent nations that the U.S. invaded, is not without its resources. Iran does have long-range missiles, and they put them to work with strikes throughout the region. In fact, there is a map. Let's see here. Let me do this, and we'll change to this. Here we go. Map. And wrong overlay for wrong show. But let me put up the correct overlay with the correct color for the correct show. Here we go. And some of this stuff. Technology has been a disaster today. You can tell, like I said, Mercury's in retrograde because nothing to do with words or technology or contracts is working well today. So Iran is here, obviously. They did strikes in Oman and UAE. That right there, which is called the Strait of Hormuz, which is access to much of the world's shipping, especially oil shipping, out of the Gulf and around to the Suez Canal, is currently shut. Which is not good because a lot of shipping traffic happens right in this area, particularly if you're an oil-producing state. That's usually where most of it leaves through. You had strikes in Lebanon by Hezbollah. there's been heavy strikes in Israel. Those have been downplayed a lot. There was a strike overnight between Sunday and Monday in the island of Cyprus. There was a strike on U.S. military base in Jordan, bases in Iraq, bases in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and in Saudi Arabia. So points out this, and so this is Iran's early response has been strikes in all of these areas, particularly along the coast here, and obviously as far as Israel and Jordan. Most of those were U.S. military sites, not sites that were native to the countries involved. Um, there is kind of what they're already calling an expansion of the war. It's been, not that the Middle East is that stable of a region, but it is getting more destabilized, and has caused new attacks and whatnot to break out, and new responses. Yes, thank you, New York Times. I know I'm not inviting anyone. Thank you. Here's the better map of the sites in Dubai, an oil tanker off the coast of Oman, a base in Oman, a U.S. Navy base in Saudi Arabia, a U.S. base in Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, 3 places in Kuwait, including the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait, an Iraqi Air Force base that was U.S. forces, an RAF air base in Cyprus, points in Israel, and a point in Jordan. Now, what the response to all of this will be is going to be interesting. We've already struck but I think I read between 900 to 1,000 targets in Iran. People are already doing the math on how many Tomahawk missiles that was, and how much of our stockpile that we have used. I did find it interesting that the 2 aircraft carriers we've sent for power projection in the region are not in the Persian Gulf here. They're in the Red Sea over here, which is a quite interesting thing, because it puts them out of range to attack Iran. The U.S. attacks came from bases in Israel and Cyprus, and in Iraq. But it also means that the Pentagon thought there was a reasonable threat that Iran could find the carriers and could strike them. And even though our ability to stop that from happening is superior, there's still a chance that they might get through. A lot of Iranian missiles have been stopped. These are the ones that have gotten through. Obviously, regionally speaking, this is, necessarily not so great, because now this conflict, which is primarily between the U.S. and Israel over Iranian nuclear development, has now expanded to every major regional player, especially Saudi Arabia, who wants to be the titular regional power in a way that in the way they never have been, and in a way that Iran always has been. Now, the stomach, the tolerance for continued attacks from Iran because of this. It'll be interesting to see how long these countries are willing to put up with this level of bombardment. Like I said, it says many sites in Dubai, which is here. There was a quite significant bombardment in Dubai. A lot of those glittering towers and whatnot were hit with missiles. There was fires and local deaths and all this sort of thing. And so the tolerance for this stuff may end up being quite low, and that puts the United States especially in a very awkward position. Jordan doesn't need to be friends with any of these people. We still need to maintain relationships with all of these people. And that may leave our involvement with this to be rather short. But I want to go through some of these kind of updates of where we are at this hour. It says here that the United Arab Emirates Defense Ministry said on social media that its air defenses were dealing with a barrage of ballistic missiles coming from Iran in a post on social media in the early hours of Tuesday in the Middle East. I'd also heard in some of the rumors on Twitter, that some of the Gulf states had felt like the U.S. was not defending them properly. Although, given the equipment that we've sold them, they should be able to defend themselves properly. That was kind of the whole point. Yes, that was kind of a rumor floating around. I don't know how valid that is, but that was when we're floating around. It says here that shortly after striking in Tehran and telling Israelis they were free to leave, shelters for Afghani launches had been detected. The Israeli military early on Tuesday morning said it was attacking in Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah command centers and weapons storage facilities in Beirut, which obviously, when we talk about conflict expansion, this is now, expanding the conflict into Lebanon. Israel has already seized land in southern Lebanon for themselves, but it's not surprising that they would want to stave off attacks from Hezbollah. There's a picture of people in shelters in Tel Aviv to stay in protected spaces. Um, Apparently, they already need money. Speaker Mike Johnson said in a supplemental funding request was discussed in the classified briefing on Iran to pay for new munitions and other costs associated with the continued military operation. Quote, it was brought up in the discussion, he said. There are more details to be determined, of course, on how long the operation goes and what the need is, but our appropriators certainly asked that question. Well, considering we were doing it without an authorization of military force or anything else, yeah, that would be an interesting conversation. One of the big stories has been the friendly fire incident, where apparently, due to some sort of mix-up, 3 F-15 fighters were shot down, presumably by each other, although it said the Kuwaiti Air Defenses mistakenly shot down 3 American jets on Monday. That's the first time I've heard it being blamed on the Kuwaitis. All 6 crew members ejected safely, and there's this lovely video of this lady pilot being rescued.
You need something to help you?
And there she's landed on the beach in Kuwait. Welcome to Kuwait, and these nice people have come to help her.
No problem. Thank you for helping us. Everything perfect?
So, yeah. So obviously, this has been a quite big story today. This is the big story that the hardest hits in Iran lie ahead, and offers conflicting rationales for the military campaign. It says the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us, and we're not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, Ms. Rubio said. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. That's a sentence that makes sense. He went on to lay out military objectives that had nothing to do with imminent danger to the United States, and appeared rooted instead in a longer-term mission of weakening Iran's long-range missiles to degrade its ability to shield its nuclear program. Quote, the purpose of this is to destroy that missile capability, he said, reaching beyond the administration's initial explanation that the operation was meant to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. What they are trying to do, and have been trying to do for a very long time, is build a conventional weapons capability as a shield where they can hide behind, Mr. Rubio said, meaning there will come a point when they have so many conventional missiles, so many drones, and can inflict so much damage that no one can do anything about their nuclear program. His comments reframed U.S. participation in the strikes as being far beyond a response to a specific time-sensitive threat, which our president has broad unilateral authority to respond to. That raised more questions about Congress's role, a question that the House and Senate are set to weigh in on the week as a pair of votes seeking to limit President Trump's power to continue using force against Iran. Mr. Rubio's remarks also contradicted the administration's previous emphasis on the possibility that Iran could soon launch missiles capable of reaching the continental United States, an argument he made last week ahead of the strikes, even though American officials told reporters that U.S. intelligence agencies had no evidence Iran was on such a path. I believe Iran's most sophisticated missile can only make it to Europe. I think it only goes 1,000 kilometers, and it's like Eastern Europe, not like Western Europe. So, that's what we know at this hour. This is some of the rubble in Tehran, from a Times reporter there, and they are beginning already the cleanup process. This was a police station that was bombed, and that's where we are. That's kind of where we are at this hour. It's 4:01 in the morning in Tehran. It's 2:30 in Tel Aviv, which is very helpful. Let's take a look at photos real quick. Oh yes, and so this is the this is the damaged building in Tehran. More office buildings. This is the I think the daily traffic, morning traffic, and a funeral already. These are people fleeing Lebanon, um, and a school that's been turned into a shelter. Just absolutely haunting photos. Aftermath of an Israeli airstrike. This is Beirut, a shelter in Israel in Rishwan. Um, and yeah, and obviously this is a mourning parade for the Ayatollah. Mourning Ayatollah Khomeini. That's, I think it was one of the first bombings. This is, yes. People shouting death to America, death to Israel, mourning the Ayatollah. Israeli recovery efforts from the Iranian response. Israel has been downplaying the response from Iran, but I understand based upon on the ground reports, it has been quite brutal and quite deadly. The Iron Dome stops a lot of it, but not all of it, and the Iranians have figured out if they just fire enough missiles, eventually, and something will get through. This is the pictures from the United Arab Emirates. This is in Sharjah, and this was in the skies over Dubai and in Bahrain, and this is a protest in Beirut. Oh, this is a memorial rally. I'm sorry, memorial rally held by supporters of Lebanon's Shiite Muslim Hezbollah movement for the Ayatollah. So yeah, now that's a picture. That yes. Yeah. That's a picture for sure. Anyway, that's what we know at this hour in regards to the strikes in Iran. There is supposed to be more strikes this week. President Trump announced that there would continue to be strikes throughout the week in Iran until the regime falls or topples. The only thing I've heard on regime toppling, and I don't know if I have a link for it. Not gonna look right now. The only thing I've heard, but I will do this, and I will look now. The only thing I've heard in regards to the regime toppling is that there's a portion of the Iranian army that has sort of broken away from the new command, um, and is not participating in pushing back the protests, and so that they are kind of staying out of the repression of the protests. They are taking a different tack from what the Republican Guard, who now in somewhat is in default control of Iran, wants to do. And so it is interesting that that is already already happening. Um, as a rather fun and entertaining moment, and I will switch back to this now. People in Iran are doing the Trump dance in order to thank him for getting rid of the Ayatollah. So, you know, the little arm thing he does like this is yeah, that's what they're doing in support of all of this. And then there's a little Operation Epic Fury, and all the places that they struck. I have to say, when it comes to, you know, missiles per strike, Iran's response has been somewhat has a much more limited than ours, although greater in distance in many cases. But I thought that was a fun moment. And there's a lot of Iranians, especially those, you know, who maybe are children of those who survived the revolution, are celebrating. So yeah, here we are, people dancing in New York City, waving the Iranian flag and doing the what? Yeah. So, not gonna play that very long because YouTube will get very mad at me about that. But yes. So moving on from the Iranian update, which we've been on for a good 15 minutes, I'm going to move on to a couple other news stories, including the Clintons' deposition in regards to Epstein, some financial Epstein stuff that I thought was very interesting, and and we're gonna go from there. Before we do though, I want to play. I was gonna play this video last week and we ran out of time. I want to play this video of Senator John Ossoff, speaking about our current state of affairs, and I think this is the Democratic Party messaging moving forward. Let's just listen for a second. Then we'll talk Epstein because there's so much.
First, I will affirm what you can all clearly see. You can see it, right? Our nation is afflicted and in crisis. Americans losing insurance in the middle of chemo, hospitals closing down services to fund tax cuts for the very wealthiest people, masked federal agents profiling, brutalizing, and killing American citizens. And maybe amidst all the cruelty and the chaos, you start to feel a little doubt, and you start to wonder whether our republic can survive it. A government transformed into a tool of one man's vengeance and enrichment. A spiritually broken president who digs the moral pit deeper and deeper. But Pastor, Proverbs says, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. And Scripture is full of kings brought low by their own arrogance. Ahab surrounded himself with 400 yes men, false prophets paid to affirm the king's delusions. And those delusions led him to his defeat. And among today's false prophets are the election deniers, who indulge this president's obsession with overturning the 2020 election. Now, hear me when I say this. They tell a lie so absurd and therefore so debasing to tell that the act of telling it proves the teller's total and humiliating submission.
That is such a prescient, I think, and spiritual, scriptural, if you're Christian, way of analyzing our present situation. I'd wanted to end last week's show on that, but we went so over time, it wasn't even funny. And so I was kind of like, I don't think we have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to listen to an inspiring speech, but it was just something that was just so that was so prescient of the times, and I think talking about those sorts of things in a less Christian coded way, going forward will do good for Democrats. And I think it's also where emotionally, psychologically, a lot of people are right now. Even like bridging this to the Iran story a little bit, I have an old friend of mine that I don't really talk to that much anymore because we had a little bit of falling out about politics, not in policy or in anything, but the way in which he chose to speak to me about these matters, I did not find respectful, and so I had to distance myself from the situation. But just as people around here know, I never shy away from good debate. I have lots of MAGA people on the show. Most of my political guests don't agree with me because I'm in podcasting, which is fundamentally a right-wing medium, and I'm the lefty guy out here. So I'm constantly in debate with people, sort of thing. But I always tell people, even in the comment section of this show, I do not mind debate, but it must be respectful. And this person was not respectful. Anyway, I've been wanting all weekend to send him just a repeating text of no new wars, no new wars, no new wars. Remember no new wars, no new wars. Yes, no new wars. And I'm like, you screamed that at me through the phone in 2024. Screamed it. Melting down, screamed that at me. And yet, here we are, bombing indiscriminately all over the place, but especially this Iran situation. I think I'm not going to say that getting rid of the Ayatollah Khomeini isn't a good idea, because it is. I'm not saying that even regime change in Iran isn't a good idea. My dad thinks we should have done that 20 years ago, 30 years ago now. Well, actually 40 years ago now. I'm old. But uh thinks we should have done it a long time ago. I'm not saying that any of those things are bad or terrible. The lack of congressional authorization is certainly concerning. The lack of the kind of interesting narratives around the reason why are also quite interesting. But I think it's the public support of this war is not that great, and it will probably fall quickly, especially if things become protracted and or body bags start piling up. Most of us are still reeling from Iraq and Afghanistan. There's certainly not going to be any excitement for ground troops on the ground or any sort of occupation. It is quite clear from some of the things the president has posted over the last 24 hours that they're hoping the Iranian people will do the dirty work for them, and the airstrikes will be the necessary nudge over the edge to cause the Iranian regime to fall. I'm not saying that any of that's a bad idea, but I do think we are in a very difficult time in this country, and I think more people are starting to feel it. The falling approval ratings, I think, are definitely emblematic of that. As someone who's old enough to remember the Bush years, I remember when there was the axis of evil, and Iran was on the axis of evil, which now really could only leave North Korea left. If I were Kim Jong Un, I would be concerned. Um, and this has put us in a very interesting and difficult time in our country, and who we have in charge and why and what's going on. I think we should all be collectively concerned about unchecked state power. Don't care who's in the White House. Unchecked state power is not a good thing, regardless of who's in the White House. We should also be concerned about unchecked power. We should all be concerned that our institutions are not functioning. We should all be concerned about how we've gotten ourselves to this situation, and most importantly, how we pull back from it. I've watched this video. Getting back to the Ossoff video, I've watched this video a few times, and I'm impressed with it every single time. Especially doing it in Georgia, where we have, and the seizing of the Fulton County ballots. I'm not going to get into that tonight because I did it last week. But if you had read the newsletter this weekend, you would have seen my deep dive. So if you want to go read my deep dive on the Georgia election thing, head over to CameronJournal.substack.com and click on the most recent post. And you will see my very early Saturday reporting on the Iran situation, and you'll also see a deep dive with tons of links about the Georgia ballot situation, why Fulton County ballots were seized, where the research and ideas came from, and some of the concerns I have and some of the things that I think are quite legit. I think it's like an 8-point list. It's a deep dive. So if you want to catch up on all of that and find out about Kevin Monclo, the person who did all the research, and his 236 pages of research he has done into the issues in Fulton County, definitely head over to CameronJournal.substack.com for that. So, all right, let's move on quickly and let's get into all things Epstein. So, should we start with the Clintons? Maybe. I do want to get into the money, but so last week on Friday and Thursday and Friday, both Bill and Hillary came in for to be deposed by the oversight committee. There's full 4.5 hour deposition videos here. I have not watched them yet. They've just been out this evening about 4. They came out at 3:45. I was in the middle of technology drama when those came out. But we can see here both.
Can the court reporter please swear in the witness?
Swear them in. There we are.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this deposition will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
So so those are fun to watch. The one clip that is kind of stood out that I think is quite interesting. I was actually listening to it on a loop while I was putting makeup on for the show. Is the way Clinton is talking about his interaction with Trump and Epstein, and he phrases it very carefully. Now, the committee has said it's calling out Democrats for selective questions and and that President Trump is clear of wrongdoing. I don't think that's what he's saying. But the way he does talk about it is very interesting, especially considering what we know from the files based upon the tips and some of the other things along the way. Let's listen for a moment.
I hate this, but because I don't believe I should inject anything. But I do not want to leave the impression, but since there was no follow-up question, the president never, this is 20-something years ago, never said anything to me to make me think he was involved in anything improper with regard to Epstein either. He just didn't. That's the truth. As I said earlier, the only conversation I had with President Trump about this was in the early 2000s. And I have no information that he did anything wrong. I just want it all out there. I want everybody to get it all out there and let everybody see where we are. I hate this, but.
And it was a very interesting, especially I'm going to go watch the whole clip because I'd like to see what it is without the cut and what the other back and forth was. But I think it was very, very interesting that, Bill's like, look, I don't have any evidence that Trump did anything. He never told me about it. We talked about it one time forever ago. So, long before Trump was in politics and Bill had been out of office for a few years, in the middle of the Bush years. All this sort of thing. I thought it was very, very interesting. I kind of want to see what the context of it is, but I think it's very interesting. And obviously, the Oversight Committee has a certain narrative they're trying to push with all of this. And people mention it almost, immediately sort of thing. And so I'm going to tuck that away for later. And get into all of that. There was an interesting thing from Raw America. This was a very great British writer on Substack rather, and it says here that Bill Clinton sat for hours of closed-door questioning on Friday before the House Oversight Committee, making him the first president in American history to be forced to testify before Congress against his will. That's a remarkable sentence to have to write. Clinton's position was straightforward. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. He acknowledged he had a relationship with Epstein, but insisted he never knew about the crimes. He said he cut off the association well before Epstein's first guilty plea. Here's what's interesting. There are a lot of photos of the current president with Epstein, and Trump himself was less than enthusiastic about seeing Clinton deposed. Bill Clinton dropped one hint he may give a clue about Trump's position. During his testimony, Clinton revealed he'd had a conversation with Trump at a golf event in which Trump told him the reason he fell out with Epstein. According to Democratic representatives who described the testimony afterward, Trump told Clinton that the rift was over a land dispute, not because Epstein was preying on girls working at Mar-a-Lago, which is the story Trump has continued to tell. Chairman James Comer tried to spin this as Clinton clearing Trump of wrongdoing. Democrats pushed back hard. According to one Democrat, what Clinton actually said was that nothing he personally heard from Trump gave him reason to believe Trump was involved in any wrongdoing. And I think that's the clip we just heard. But we have the whole video so we can go find out about all this. That's different from exoneration. It's important to note that Trump's name appears roughly 38,000 times across the DOJ's 3 million Epstein documents. Based on Clinton's testimony, Congressman Ro Khanna proposed a new Clinton rule, meaning that presidents and their families have to testify when Congress issues a subpoena. Several Democrats made clear they'd be invoking that precedent should they regain control of the House in November. The investigation that was supposed to be about a bipartisan reckoning with Epstein's network has turned into a partisan sideshow, while the current president, who has plenty of Epstein questions to answer, watches from the sidelines. Obviously, we know his opinion about all that. But there is it was interesting. We had the early reporting on what the testimony was. We now have the full videos, so I will be watching those, and we will see what comes of if I find anything juicy, and I will report it in the newsletter on Saturday, where I'm sure we'll discuss more about this. These videos have only been out for 4 hours, so people really haven't had time to go through them yet. But people will, and more clips will come out, and we'll, again, subscribe to the newsletter, CameronJournal.substack.com or CameronJournal.com/newsletter, and I will have more updates as the week goes on. The other interesting thing, this creator, posted this video, about these new 50 pages of Epstein docs that were up and removed and have the story and interview about an underage person who was accusing Trump of something. There are 4 interviews, 3 are missing, and here's the story and here's what he has to say. I had heard about this. I'd saved this link from middle of the week. I had heard about this. The documents still have not been found. Obviously, the Clinton deposition kind of pushed it off the front page, but here's the story.
The story of 50 pages of FBI interviews missing from the Epstein server isn't going away. It's getting bigger by the hour. Originally reported by journalist Roger Solenberger on his Substack, the 50 pages of documents included interviews with a woman who says that when she was 13 years old, she was sexually assaulted by Trump. Next, NPR picked up the story, and today, the New York Times. This may be one of the biggest scandals in presidential history. And, as
not quite the biggest scandal, but yes, that is the situation as we have it and as we know it. We don't need the last 10 seconds of that. But there is let's also be clear, it is the written testimony of an interview. It's not necessarily, smoking gun evidence or anything like that. Here was some of the original screenshots from before it was taken down. However, there are some aspects of it that are quite harrowing. I personally witnessed defendant Trump telling the plaintiff that she shouldn't ever say anything or shouldn't want to disappear like the 12-year-old female Maria, and that was capable of having her whole family killed. And this was under penalty of perjury by a Tiffany Doe. And it says that, and there was obviously, I'm not going to say these things out loud, but there's the crime at the top. If you want to look at it, yes, Mr. Trump did things to underage persons up there. And so that was the files that were taken down. One of the things that it's very important to remember about a lot of these things is these are tips, these are interviews, these are witness statements. There's not a lot of corroborative evidence. If there's any, a lot of these things are he said, she said. One of the main issues with the Epstein files that will be true in this country that will be less true in other countries. American standards for evidence, particularly at the federal level, are quite high. And you have to have an airtight case before the federal government even bothers to show up to court or file anything. A lot of times things don't get prosecuted in this country because our standards of evidence are quite high, and oftentimes there's just not enough evidence. This is certainly one of those situations. It's a witness interview. It's a tip. It's not anything hard or concrete. There's really no way of proving it either which way. The allegation is quite shocking. It obviously isn't, the first time we've heard about President Trump's sex life. But it is obviously even more horrible when it involves someone that was so young at the time. But the unfortunate reality is it's not really anything prosecutable or actionable. Now, in other countries and other legal systems, it would be treated differently. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, in this country, a simple accusation that was a while ago does not a case make. Now, we can have, and as I think we should, we can have a debate if this is the person who should be leading our nation. One of the reasons why impeachment is a government civil procedure and not a criminal one is that is high officials, presidents, vice presidents, judges, all this type of thing. It is the accountability mechanism for removal that allows other branches of government to stop it and prevent them from harming the country. Whether Trump should be leading our country is quite another question. I obviously personally do not think he should, did not vote for him, did not recommend people to vote for him, anything like that. I think these allegations are quite shocking, and I think it's not good for our leader to have this swirl of scandal around. Some are old enough to remember when we impeached Bill Clinton for getting a blowy and a hand DJ under the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. Um, and so I don't, as from a politics perspective, I think this is terrible politics. I think it is not necessarily the type of person you want in charge who has this type of baggage and these type of issues, but it does not a criminal case make. I think, unfortunately, and this gets into narrative, I think this is one where, given the volume of everything, given the amount of times, according to people and different things, that there's just kind of this inextricable link between Epstein and Trump, I think is not so good for Trump politically, and I think he's losing a bit of control of the narrative on all of this. And there's obviously a very new and different, a different narrative, kind of flying out, um, into the world about him. I don't know that it's really going to matter, but the fact that they had these up and then took these down is also not great. There's been several instances of that. I know we're getting long into the show, and we're probably not going to get to the surveillance state stuff that I really wanted to about Palantir and all this type of thing. But I would do want to close on a couple things. One is this guy, Randall Scott Taylor, did a $2.1 billion audit in Epstein's financial records. And I went through this over the weekend getting ready for the show. And he breaks it all down in terms of the shell entities that were used to move around all of this money and the number of wires. And we sometimes can find out who owns these, sometimes you can't. Um, and the shells moved money between themselves 8 times, totaling $260 million. That's internal circulation with no external economic purpose visible in the documents. They also list people, including Darren Indike, Eileen Alexanderson, Lyle Casriel, Richard Kahn, Melanie Spinella, Scott Stackman, Halperin and Groff. The key persons here were Jeffrey Epstein, Leon Black, Deborah Black, Ghislaine Maxwell, Brad Wexhaller, Brad Waxler, Larry Visosky, Leslie Wexner, Joichi Ito, and Jean-Luc Brunel, is kind of where most of this money is moving, at least that is available for him to go through. It says the single biggest direct bank-to-person flow in the network, J.P. Morgan Chase sent $97.3 million to Deborah Black across 33 transactions. Deborah Black then chose $65.2 million flowing to Leon Black in 55 payments. Deutsche Bank sent another $36.5 million directly to Leon Black in 7 transfers. Between the two banks, the Black family entities received over $507 million in documented flows. Epstein separately sent $77 million to Black Family Partners LP in 4 payments. Now, here's what's interesting is the gaps. A forensic accounting analysis looks at net positions and asks one question: where's the difference? Southern Financial LLC has a $412.3 million net positive position. That means $412.3 million more entered the entity than left it through documented channels. Either the money is still in the account, unlikely for a dissolved entity, it exited through a payment type not captured in the corpus, or the outflow documents are sealed and redacted. Hayes Trust has 79.9 million net negative. Jeepers Incorporated shows 155.6 million more leaving than arriving. BV70 LLC has a $101.5 million gap in the opposite direction, more out than in. These are open questions. The documents don't close them. Across all 8 shell entities, total documented inflows are $2.23 billion, and total documented outflows are $2.13 billion. The aggregate net position is roughly $99 million positive, but the entity level gaps are far larger and cancel each other out in the aggregate, which is exactly what you'd expect to see in a structure designed to obscure the trail. It shows here the money starts moving between about mid 2007 through 2015, and kind of shows this is the monthly, and then this is annual between 2005 and 2020. It's interesting that there was still money moving after his death, which I thought was interesting. There's some other inner circle people, public figures, including $2 million to Noam Chomsky, Leslie Wexner, as I recall, I'm like, no one we really know or care about took money besides Noam Chomsky. Um, if I were Noam, I would retire and move to a non-extradition country or something. It's like, sir, you talked to them, you gave them advice, and you took, says here, $2.2 million. Not good. And then we also have Deutsche, JP Morgan, and Citibank involved as custodians of various and sundry things. So it says here, ultimately, this is not an investigation. I don't have subpoena power. I don't have access to sealed records. I can't compel testimony or demand account statements. What I have is the publicly released record, the same documents available to anyone with an internet connection on the patients to read them. What I did was treat these documents like what they are, financial records. I extracted every payment, classified every transaction, cross-referenced every name against flight manifest, source documents, and SAR filings, built a relational database with 39 tables and 26.6 million rows, wrote extraction pipelines for 10 payment types, published 18 prior narratives covering specific angles like Deutsche Bank analysis, the art market transactions, Gratitude America connections, and the flight financial temporal correlations. This narrative, number 19, is the season finale. Every name, every shell, every bank, every operator, every flow. All of it drawn from the publication ledger, which holds the full corpus of the 10,964 transactions and 2.146 billion. Season 1 is the foundation. The machine is map, but the documents aren't done talking. The companion visualization lets you click any node and see exactly what went in and what went out. The forensic workbook contains the full data set in spreadsheet format. The entire repository is public on GitHub. I'm a finance professional. I did this work pro bono because public records should be publicly understood. The numbers are here, the names are here, the gaps are here. What happens next is up to the people with subpoenas. This is impressive, and this is like you said, this is the end of something he's been working on since the files came out, and this is just part of everything else. But when I saw this and was reading this, I'm like, one, elegant presentation, bravo. But two, it was just amazing to watch $2 billion move around, and between who and for why we don't always know. But the gaps, where the money moved, why, the how, the who, was all quite interesting. The complicity with both domestic and international banks. If this were a different time and under a different administration, this would be one hell of an FTC or an SEC. I'm sorry. Yeah, FTC and SEC investigation into all of this, because essentially this could be a money laundering case. Now, that would require investigations and all this type of thing, and a lot of document production from banks and people and all this type of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a lot, and it was it's just the more and more we learn, and the farther and farther into this we get, the more and more crazy it is. And this is only a fraction. This is only the data we have in the files that starts in 2005. We don't have the stuff before, So who knows what occurred, in the 90s, anything before 2005. And so if you want to go look this up, I actually saved this link, and when I tried to re-access it, it did not work. So I would just look up Randall Scott Taylor Epstein, and it came up on the first page of Google. So if you want to go look and click through all of this and all of his other stuff, like I said, he has tons of other stuff, including the companion visualization of the machine and where went to who and for why and by what means. He has it all figured out and mapped out. So if you want to play with some of this stuff, you certainly can, between banks, shell entities, operators, and then the actual people in control of all of this. If I were Leon Black, I'd be very concerned. If I were some of these banks, I'd be very concerned. But of course, we never arrest banks in this country. Now, before we go, it's been a long day and a long show. But before we go, I'm going to I'm gonna read through this from this new social contract with Ro Khanna a little bit. We're going to end on this. And it says here, I love the quote, "We must not ask what America can do for Silicon Valley, but what Silicon Valley must do for America." I don't think Ro Khanna understands that Silicon Valley has spent the last 40 years making sure they never have to actually contribute to society in any real way because they all read too much Ayn Rand. But anyway, um, he says here, first, we must keep humans in the loop. We need real protections against mass displacement, beginning with our 3.5 million truck drivers. Even as self-driving trucks improve safety and efficiency, human drivers must remain just like the pilots must still fly our planes. This will allow us to develop AI that augments human capability instead of eliminating jobs. Second, every large company must bargain with its workers. Unions or elected representatives should ensure displaced workers move into new value-creating roles and can share in AI's productivity gains through higher wages, profit sharing, and shorter work weeks. Third, we have to fix the tax code's anti-human bias. Robots get accelerated depreciation while hiring humans comes with payroll taxes. Nobel laureate Darren Asimoglu estimates that companies pay about zero tax on digital tools, while paying something like 30% in taxes between employers and employees when they hire workers. This makes no sense. We must make it easier to hire workers, not AI agents. Fourth, we must launch a future workforce administration. We should seize this moment of anxiety among white-collar and blue-collar families alike and answer it with the boldest, most patriotic jobs agenda in generations. Funded by a modest wealth tax on the trillions created here and by a token tax on AI used by businesses that displaces labor, this program will put Americans to work in public service. The initiative will drive moonshot projects that expand the frontiers of science, clean energy, and biotech. It will mobilize young people to rebuild towns, teach our children, provide child care and elder care, and strengthen small businesses in every community. And we will launch 1,000 new trade schools and tech institutes so the next generation are prepared for careers AI can't replace. Fifth, data centers must serve the communities who power them. Right now, data centers are one-way extraction centers from communities to the wealthiest corporations. That must end. Tech companies need to provide local communities with compute resources for schools and libraries, create local tech jobs and fund startups, and use renewable energy and dry cooling technology. We should look to what Singapore has done with their data centers for a balanced solution and invest in massively increasing the supply of clean energy. Most importantly, tech companies must pay their full electricity bills instead of shifting costs onto communities. Sixth, we must prevent AI from weaponizing our public discourse. We can unite across party lines to stop engagement-driven algorithms from spreading hate. End Section 230 protection for amplified violent content and require platforms to open up so Americans can connect freely across them. Seventh, we must regulate AI so it's used to improve humanity, not damage it. And, that's the end. I had last week talked about the kind of coming surveillance state and some stuff in Palantir that's very concerning and all this type of thing. Obviously don't really have time to get to that right now. But it was interesting that Ro Khanna schlepped out to Stanford and talks about a new tech social contract and lays out all of these things that tech can and should do to actually participate in the society that they are exploiting and do things for everyone and not just themselves. As I just said, it's funny that he's doing this because tech and Silicon Valley has spent the last 40 years doing and trying to create exactly the opposite. They do not want to be part of society. They do not want to feel an obligation to other people. They do not want to worry about libraries and all this type of thing. They want to be separate. That's why they keep trying to build freedom cities in the middle of nowhere. That's why they want to be separated from the masses that they consider, quite frankly, too stupid to live. And again, if any of you had read Ayn Rand and The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged, you would literally know the playbook. Literally. They all think that they're the next John Galt, and they just need to get away from the world that's holding them back from reaching their true creative potential. So this is a nice speech, and this is a nice idea. It is antithetical to their existence. At least their existence as they view it. You want this, Ro Khanna? You better legislate it and use the power of the law to make it so, to force them to do it, and hope that that whole Freedom Cities thing never gets off the ground. They do not want to live in a society. They don't. That's why all of them were so excited when Margaret Thatcher said there's no such thing as a society. Ronald Reagan, I'm going to get big government off your back. Bill Clinton, the era of big government is over. Are you seeing the picture yet? We're not necessary to their plans. And on that frightening note, I will leave you because we started late and I'm not going to keep you. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is the Cameron Journal Newshour. You can visit me online at Cameron Cowan on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, at Cameron Journal on TikTok for clips of the show. Thank you all so much for watching. We had a wonderful group here this evening, 23. Bravo us. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Cameron Cowan. This has been the Cameron Journal Newshour. Good night.